All right, what's up? Living in Jacksonville. It is live Thursday night, 8 p.m. And man, what a week it has been. It has starting to really ramp up. I guess it's because of the holiday weekends coming up. A lot of folks have taken this opportunity to come and visit Northeast Florida. And I'll tell you what, this is a good time to zone in on this show for a little bit because tonight we're going to be talking about purchasing a new construction home over resales. And I came up with this show idea because when people come into town, we still have a lot of people that are relocating to Florida, whether it's for jobs, for better weather, um, for tax purposes or whatnot. Folks are still coming in from other areas and they watch this channel and they say, you know what, I'm going to go scratch an itch. And so it's during these times, these long holiday weekends, that people take advantage and come on down. And so I've had a lot of folks visiting this week, and I feel like sales are really ramping up. You know, we're starting in spring now. It's March heading into April, and when folks come into town, I always try to show them a little bit of the new construction, and then of course some resales in the same communities, just so they can compare and really understand what the difference is in the market. Now, before I get started, as we get into why potentially new construction is better than a resale right now, if you're watching, make sure you go ahead and put on the comment section where you're watching from. And of course, if you have anything that you'd like to ask tonight, go ahead and tell me what it is you want to hear about, because this is an interactive show. So go ahead and put in the comments where you're watching from, and any questions you may have, especially what I'm talking about tonight, or anything else on that matter, especially real estate in here in Jacksonville. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of get into it a little bit here. Now, there's obvious reasons why new construction is better than resale in general, okay, without getting into the fact that right now interest rates are still high and builders are giving a lot of different options as far as incentives to buy down those rates. But before I get into that, the obvious reasons for purchasing new construction is, number one is you have that warranty. Okay, when you buy a resale, usually the warranty is out. The all full coverage warranty in new construction is 1 year. And that's why I always tell folks, when you're buying new construction, you want to make sure that you get that inspection done right around 10, 11 months, right before that 1 year warranty comes up. In some cases, then you have your HVAC at 3 to 5 years, and then at 10 year, you have that structural warranty. But that first year is really important to make sure that once your house here in Northeast Florida, you'll see some stress cracks, you'll see some different things happening in the home after living in 1 year. And that's why it's really important to go ahead and get that inspection done before your 1 year warranty is up. So that's an obvious benefit when you purchase new construction. Of course, the second obvious benefit buying new construction is having no renovations, right? So that is a plus as well. Most people these days, it's just so hard to find the trades that do a good job. It's gotten really expensive. So people are less and less likely to want to do renovations unless they've owned multiple properties or investors of some sort, and they say, hey, I'm okay with that, or they're getting a really killer deal on a resale. Third reason you want to buy new construction is obviously the homes are more energy efficient. Newer homes have better insulation. In some cases, you'll see some of these energy efficient homes like we have here in Nocatee, with the spray foam insulation added as well. That makes a huge difference on your electric bill. It's obvious on an older home, you're not going to have as good insulation as a newer home, and therefore your home's definitely going to be a little more energy efficient with these newer homes that you're seeing today. And then, of course, with the no renovations comes fewer repairs. I've been in our house 4 or 5 years now, and still, even though it's a newer home, there's still little things here and there that need to be repaired. And that just comes with the territory. So with a brand new home, you've got that less wear and tear, and then of course less repairs to deal with. People just want to move in and not deal with those kind of things. And then another big thing that we're seeing, especially in this day and age, we've all heard that home insurance is skyrocketing here in Florida. Not just because of the storms or hurricanes or whatnot. We're also seeing it because we've had a lot of insurance fraud here in the state of Florida as well, especially with roofing and whatnot. And a lot of insurance companies are pulling out. And between that, we're seeing a lot of insurance rates going up. Going back to the roof thing, seeing the roof repairs fraud here in Florida rise, that is raising insurance. And so even in the past, it's been where you could purchase a home, and as long as it had shingles that were not older than 20 years old, you were fine. You could purchase that home. But now, because the policies have changed with insurance companies, if you're looking at a resale and the roof is older than 13, 14 years, you're not going to be able to get a loan on that because people are not going to want to insure you. If you can't get insurance, the bank's not going to give you a loan. So really, believe it or not, I've seen some perfectly good roofs at 13 years, and the insurance companies said, no, we're not going to insure it. It needs to be replaced. And therefore, the lender is not going to allow a loan on that house either. All right, we got Ty watching from Colorado. Good to have you, Ty. Do some builders build better efficiency than others? Well, that's a loaded question, Ty. A lot of builders, it just depends on the builder, really. Here in Nocatee, one of our local builders, Providence Home, they have the whole marketing ploy of the chocolate bunny in the attic. And that's because they do a spray foam insulation in their attic and all their homes, and their energy efficient homes rated by a third party. So they certainly are the most well known for their energy efficient homes, and they do, does make a big difference on your electrical bill. And I happen to live in a Providence home, and I can tell you that it does make a big difference on your electrical bill. So certainly, though, some builders that are not maybe labeled energy efficient homes, they will do spray foam insulation. I think maybe ICI does. They'll do a lot of things for you that most builders won't do. But there's different levels of insulation, and certainly I think the higher tier builder is, the better quality build it's going to be, and better insulation, if you will. So again, that's why it's important to have yourself a good qualified real estate broker to help you, guide you, and give you a little bit of guidance as far as which builder to go with, if that's what's really important to you, because every builder has their pros and cons, and whether we want to admit it or not, every builder is a different level of build, right? So some homes are more expensive than others because their quality of the builds are just a higher tier builder. And again, I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother show. And I've had a lot of people ask me that, but I do certainly try to, when I'm dealing with my clients on a personal level, it's really important to figure out what you're looking for, what's your needs, what's your timelines, and then what's your style of build. So going through all those questions, I can kind of hone in on floor plans and builders that might suit you, and then also talk about the nitty gritty, what's positive, pros and cons of each builder. And that's what I always recommend. So I always have a lot of people that are from certain areas. You said you're from Colorado, certain areas of the country are always asking about solar. And in some cases it doesn't make sense. In some cases it could make sense depending the age of the house and the area, and of course, if it's energy efficient or not. My home, I did look at solar, and it was going to take 30 years to make it make sense, spending that kind of investment, even with the tax credits, because my electrical bill on a 3,000 plus square foot house, I mean, electricity, and my wife's an Eskimo, if she's listening, sorry, honey, but we have the air conditioning. She works from home. I'm in and out all the time working from home. So we always have the AC cranked down around 70 or even less at night. And our electrical bill is, maybe 130, 150 bucks in the midst of summer in a 3,000 plus square foot house. So it's pretty energy efficient, and it just didn't make sense for solar. But yeah, so I appreciate that question. Thanks, Ty, for that. Really quick, I want to mention also, I think the biggest key right now, though, differentiating buying new construction from resales, besides the common reasons I just mentioned, the warranty, no renovations, more energy efficient, fewer repairs, lower home insurance. The big one right now is interest rates. And so, everybody keeps talking about interest rates going down, but we don't really know when that's going to happen, right? And that is the key with these resales right now, because we're seeing a lot of these builders giving out incentives. And like I said, I always say on these shows, they do not want to lower their list price, especially if the community's already started, because if they lower the list price, they're going to mess up their own comps. So they try to incentivize buyers in other ways, if you will. And one of those big ways would be through finance incentives. And there's so many different ways they can incentivize you as a buyer that a seller on a resale can't compete. And I noticed this week, that there was a lot of resales I showed my customers that a brand new home was almost the same price, maybe a little bit more, but the incentives made it way more interesting for them to purchase the new home than the resale. And some of these incentives are crazy. I'm going to go over that. But before I get into it, I have a real special treat tonight. I actually have my lender joining me tonight, Brian, one of my preferred lenders for a lot of the new construction here. And I'm bringing him on because it is really complicated as far as how much incentive monies you can get from a builder, depending on the loan that you're getting. So I'm bringing someone who's specialized in this to help explain it. We're going to talk about different scenarios that we're actually going through with different customers, so that you can understand truly how what's the smart way to buy, but also what's the smart way to take advantage of some of these incentives right now. And I think as we get further into the spring season, summer, these incentives are going to start tapering off, right? The deals always start at the beginning of the year, and then as spring buying comes in, you guys are calling. I have a lot of people in town this week for the holidays, and they're all scheduled out through April, May, June. And so the incentives become less and less. The only reason you'll see builders with more incentives right now is if they have more inventory, because supply and demand is the rule. So now, of course, today's show topic, there's always exceptions, right, on the resales, because like I live in 20 Mile. There's not a ton of inventory right now, and there's no new construction to compete in this section of Nocatee. And what other areas have low inventory still, there is exceptions to that, because there's no opportunity for new construction in this specific neighborhood. So there's always going to be exceptions. This is really a play on supply and demand. And so here in Northeast Florida and St. Johns County, we're finding a lot more deals as you go further west of Phillips Highway. But let me go ahead and add to the stage my friend Brian, our preferred lender. Let me see here. I'm learning to get going. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Were you able to listen in on anything I've been talking about?
Yeah, I caught you about 8 minutes in, so I've heard a little
Okay,
bit. So
good. At least I'm not talking any rubbish. And again, anybody who's watching or later on, if you have any comments for Brian and I, a lender who's in the business, been in for quite over a decade, is very knowledgeable. Go ahead and make sure you put it in the comments. And if you want to comment on it tonight, we'll also share that and answer it as best as we can. So, Brian, I'm trying to explain to our people watching that inventory is a little bit more robust out west, but let me go ahead and share some of the things I'm seeing right now. And you may not see all, I know well, actually you do not just preferred lenders for new construction, but you do regular resales as well, right? Yeah.
Certainly. Yep.
Yeah. So, for instance, today we saw DR Horton. I had a closing with them today. DR Horton, if you're looking for a townhome, I mean, they have some incredible deals, even here in St. Johns County. And so I had some clients that were closing in Bridgewater and here in St. Johns County. And I can talk about it now because it's done. But I mean, we were seeing incentives with like $10,000 off the list price, and then another $7,000 towards closing. So they had like $17,000 in incentives. They had a rate locked in with the lender from DR Horton for, I think, 4.5% or 4.9%, 30 years fixed. So those numbers may be off or on. Don't take it my word. Don't go into DR Horton and go, this is what Greg said right now, because these incentives constantly change, right? It's like any big builder, they're going to go ahead and allocate funds towards a marketing plan every month, depending if it's a new community, depending if they have inventory that's been sitting a while. And so they have different ways to apply incentives. What else am I seeing? I'm seeing some of the builders, you'll see like some of the builders that in communities that have a high CDD fee, we're seeing builders offering to pay off the CDD bond. That's a big incentive because some of these CDD bonds could be 20, 30,000. And they're saying, hey, if you buy a house in this community, we'll pay your CDD bond off. Another thing I'm seeing is this one here in Nocatee, we're seeing as much as $40,000, $50,000 to buy down the rate. Well, they say buy down the rate, but people are using it for closing costs and for buying down the rate. So the thing is, though, with all these incentives, right, depending on your loan, if it's FHA, conventional, or whatnot, you can, the seller or the builder can only credit you so much. Is that correct, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each loan has specific what's called interested party contributions. So, for example, an FHA loan, it's up to 6%. So that's 6% of the sale price. That's the max that, and it's not just the builder, but any interested party. So your realtor, the builder, anyone contributing, to it. Conventional loans, it gets a little different. It's on a graduated scale. If someone puts less than 10% down, then it's up to 3% seller contributions. 10% to 24.9, you're at 6%. And then if you put 25% down or more, then it's 9%. So some of these incentives, they look really good, but if you're a 5% down conventional loan buyer, you may not, just from a loan limitation, you may not be able to take advantage of the whole thing. So that's good to know up front when talking with Greg that maybe if they're giving this obscene amount of money towards rate buy down, well, okay, let's use as much as we can, but then maybe knock off the sale price a little bit. So
all right, so before you go into that, because we're going to talk about how to utilize your incentive money smart, right?
Yep.
And some crazy things that we're learning this week as well, with my buyers that are looking at lower price houses, but their payments are cheaper with a higher price house because of these incentives, which is wild. So you're saying, though, if you're when you say you can only do 5%, accept 5% of contribution, depending on it, would you say FHA?
So FHA 6%.
6%. 6% of what? The loan amount or the purchase
6%
price?
of the purchase price.
Okay. All right. So it's 6% of the purchase price, right? So for instance, today we were still had some incentive money that we weren't able to utilize. I think it was only $800, but because they were only putting 3.5% down, they could only utilize a certain amount of that cash. So there was money on the table left over that they were able to pay for their closing costs, but we didn't utilize all the funds they had the rate buy down, so that was it. They were maxed out. Yeah. So tell me how that works. People, believe it or not, I mean, I think last year you and I talked about these 3-2-1 rate buy downs. We kind of exhausted that. If you guys haven't watched the show already, it's called Is It Worth Buying Down the Rates? But now we're seeing people advertising. I mean, I got a text today from Lennar Homes, and it said something regarding we have rates as low as 1.99% for the first year on select homes. 1.99 for the first year. But now I'm seeing, such as this D.R. Horton, 4.99, 30 years. Okay. And then you and I have been talking about a deal where we're doing, we have 40, 50 grand of incentive money. It covers the closing costs, but then we have enough money to buy down the rate for a fixed 30-year conventional. How does that work? I mean, give me some examples of where you're able to, I mean, current rates are what, 7%?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. And it's obviously a very credit driven market. So yeah, I mean, if you have perfect credit, everything is checking all the boxes, you probably are hovering around that 7 mark if there's no buy down. So the one that you're talking about, I mean, it's a combination of things. If we have $50,000 to work with, not only can we cover all of the closing costs, but we had enough left where we could buy the rate down into the upper 5%, and so last year when we had the conversation about the 3-2-1 and the 2-1 buy downs, those are all temporary buy downs where, I won't go into that in great detail, but at that market, it made, in my opinion, more sense to do that because rates were pushing 8% at the time. And so everyone had the mentality of, hey, we're going to refinance this loan. Let's just do it this way to bridge the gap. But now that we have enough to get into the 5s or mid 5s or low 5s or even touch the upper 4s in some circumstances, it's at that point you're not going to have to refinance. I mean, rates aren't predicted to go below 5 very much anytime soon. So if you can get it down into that mid low 5s, I mean, that's a win, huge win. And if you can do it at the builder expense, win-win. So for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to me because I didn't believe it at first because I thought you were talking about it was a 3-year buy down, whatnot, which means the first of the 3 years you get 3% off, second year 2%, 1%, but then whatever prime is, you're screwed if prime is still at 7% because then you're going back up to that 7%. But as a lender, you guys still make sure that you're qualified once the loan balloons back up to prime. Is that right?
Right. So everything's qualifying based on the initial higher rate, or not initial rate, but the end rate that will be higher. So yeah, that's the qualification. And then, with those scenarios, the temporary buy downs, then yeah, you get the big discount the first couple of years, but then those scenarios are good for someone that is going to be refinancing in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you have that kind of incentive money, to get a fixed rate, that's costing the builder tens of thousands of dollars, right? I mean, a fixed rate at 2 points. I mean, we were talking about a 7%, 7.5 down to 5.5 or 7.75 to 5.75. that's almost 2 points. That's a big difference on your monthly payment. I mean, it makes a huge difference in making the home completely affordable or not.
Absolutely. I mean, just I ran some kind of rough numbers before I called in, and I took a look at the 50,000, not only paying all the closing costs, but then buying the rate down. It saved about 650, $700 a month, um,
Right.
just from buying the rate down. That's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's incredible because, I mean, 30 years, you're locked in. You don't even have to refi at 5.75. I mean, I don't know where you see rates going. I don't think you want to go into that probably too much because everybody keeps saying rates are going to go down. They said it last year at the end of the year. Now they were saying beginning of this year, first quarter. Now they're saying at the end of next year or this year, right? Election year. So I think that is, if you have that opportunity to buy down a rate fixed, that's something that's eye opening for me. That's most interesting because, again, somebody looking to buy, again, using a real life example, a $675,000 home, but does not have, in comparison to a $750,000 home, but doesn't have the same incentive money offer from the builder. Their payments on a house that's 100, 150 more, or even more than that. I don't remember, it was 650, 750, almost. Yeah, about 100, 150,000 more. Their payments were either the same or less, right? Based with the incentives buying the rate down.
Right. So if you looked at that, I mean, the scenario you're talking about, it was so 50,000 off on the sale price. It was $296. So well, let's double that. Let's say 100,000.
Yeah.
That's roughly, let's say $600. Well, that's $100,000 more house, and it's the same payment. So it's very eye-opening because these loans are over 30 years. So, I mean, it takes a huge amount of reduction to do it. Or to get the payment to that level. So there's a ton of bang for your buck with these massive incentives. I mean,
Yeah. Let's talk about this, though, a little more in depth as far as qualifications go, because you see a lot of these builders marketing with that. And I always get calls, hey, did you hear about this? Here, did you? I'm like, well, here, hold on one second before. First of all, you got to read the fine print, right? So that you understand what the offer is. And you want to make sure, that you read the fine print and you understand the loan. You understand what house it's for, because there's all these exceptions in every community of what house they're going to offer that incentive for. Again, it's debating if the house is already done or not, and the builder has it as inventory. You'll usually see higher incentives on that one, a higher dollar amount. Or houses that are spec homes that are going to be about done, you'll see incentives that. But the real incentives are the homes that are complete and done. But the other thing is that you have to be qualified. And what does that look like?
I mean, it works like any other, pre-qualification, for it. I mean, it's, we look at credit, we look at income, and we look at down payment. And with those, it kind of fits, which loan program is going to be the best for you. But then we have to take the incentive into consideration. How much of this incentive can we use based on your program? And so what I have seen is a lot of builders, they try to kind of tailor these incentives to, I guess you could say, the most average customer, I guess you could say, based on what they're seeing for whatever the down payments are and all of that. I mean, they're probably not going to advertise a massive incentive like this if 90% of their buyers are, maybe a 5% down, kind of conventional loans. Those are the only ones that kind of can trip them up a little bit as far as the actual incentive amount. But no, I mean, as far as qualifying, it
Conventional
works
loans
like
where they're
any
only putting 5% down. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 5% down. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where we're capped at 3% contributions.
Okay, so it's really more beneficial for folks that are putting the full 20% down.
So, well, 10% is the key. So if you can get to 10, that opens the doors to basically any incentive that's out there.
Okay. It's interesting to me because, I mean, every time I bought a home, I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but I've always put 20% down. Are a lot of folks putting 10% down? Because I know you want to have more cash these days because your payments are higher, interest rates are higher. So people are keeping more cash. Are you seeing more people putting just 10% down on a conventional loan?
So over the last, I'd say, year and a half, 2 years, ever since we're in this higher rate market now, I mean, I have seen significantly larger down payments. In the past, I mean, when rates were super low, I mean, people did put less down. So no, I mean, I'm not seeing as many of those lately,
Yeah.
but on the flip side of that, well, part of it is because the sale prices are a little elevated, and if you're putting 10% down, I mean, the payment's pretty big, and so not everyone feels comfortable at certain levels. But the stigma of, oh, I have to have mortgage insurance, that really shouldn't be a deterrent, because it's very cheap. I mean, if you have 10% down, I mean, you're, depending on your loan size, I mean, 50, 60, $70 a month, something like that. It's not these hundreds and hundreds of dollars that everyone talks about.
Yeah. So I guess it's probably the lower price homes where people are putting less down because their payments aren't going to be huge. It's the higher price homes that we're seeing people putting, they're bringing equity from a sale of their home wherever they're coming from, and they're going ahead and putting a bigger chunk down so that their balance in their loan isn't as expensive. But again, if that incentive comes into play and they can buy down the rate, then they may not have to put 20%. Like you said, they just need to get that 10% down.
Right. And on the flip side of that too, yeah, everyone's talking rates are high for mortgages, but keep in mind the money in your bank account's higher right now too. So I had a couple customers do just that. They're like, well, I like my money sitting there earning that extra interest right now too. So, it's personal preference, personal goals for everything, but yeah.
Well, when you say money sitting in your bank is worth more, I mean, I'm seeing the top highest CD rate I'm seeing on a 13-month. I think ViStar is offering 5% or a little bit higher. So is that what you're talking
and that's about I mean, about 5 is what I'm seeing. And yeah, I mean, rates are a little higher than that, but the idea of having that money with you, it seemed to be a better
to give you a little more
scenario.
security?
Right.
Yeah.
Not trapped in your house.
Yeah. Are people, well, I mean, aside from these incentives, are folks buying with the mindset that they're going to refinance in the future? And can you talk a little bit more about what your thoughts on that is?
Yeah, I think where rates are now, kind of hovering around 7. I think if you're just buying with no incentive, then I would imagine within the next year or two that refinance conversation will come around. I mean, I probably wouldn't refinance if rates went to 6.5, but if they drop down into the mid to low 5s, I mean, it probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But each scenario is a little bit different for everybody. It just depends on how long you'll be in the house. But with the incentives, I mean, it would really avoid people having to go to the cost of refinancing again, which, I mean, it's not an out-of-pocket expense, but it's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or so, depending on your loan size. So yeah, I mean, not only does the builder incentive help buy it down now, but it's saving you 5, 6, 7 grand later. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. I think that's why it's so important that people shy away talking to a lender and talking to a professional broker that is going to really find out what's the right scenario for them, right? It all starts with what's your situation, where are you coming from? Go ahead and find out, what you can do as far as comfortably. What's your strategy? And then, of course, if you're taking advantage of these incentives, what's the smart way to utilize the funds? Should you keep more cash? Should you just cover your closing costs? Should you buy down the rate and pay part of your closing costs? I mean, how does that work? How do you determine that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean there is a lot, and over the last year or so, when we've seen the incentives a little larger in particular now, um, those are the conversations that I'm having with everybody. It's like, all right, well, how long do you see yourself in the house? Looking at best ways to kind of structure it, because for example, I had somebody else that they were moving here. They had the 10% to put down, but they had this other house with a couple hundred of equity in it. So the plan was they were going to basically sell that house and then apply much more to the principal of this loan. And so the way we worked it was maybe the permanent buy down wasn't the best, because there was even talks about paying it off altogether. So therefore we did some of these temporary buy downs, like a 2-1 buy down, or this particular one was a 3-2-1 buy down. So it's not a one size fit all program. There's a lot of fluidness, if you will, to it, and it just depends on you. I mean, you just got to have somebody that's able to listen, to understand, what your motivation is with the house. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's key. I was going to ask a question here. Are a lot of these conventional loans, are there an early payoff termination fee associated with that, or penalty fee, if you will?
No, I mean, anything that we do, at least, there are no prepayment penalties for
Right.
any of that. So,
Okay,
mhm.
cool. Another thing I need to ask is that when you see these builder incentives, my first worry is that, especially if the builder, so a lot of these national builders, like you'll see Mattamy Homes, DR Horton, they own their own lending departments. They may have a different name, but they own their lending departments. So they're offering you these incentives, but sometimes there's all these additional fees for that loan. So I've been telling my folks, hey, it's cool. Take a look at this loan incentive, try to get a loan estimate worksheet, but also talk to somebody else to just get an opinion, to compare what they can do and kind of compare apples to apples, try to get that loan estimate worksheet, because we found with certain builders, like major national builders like Toll Brothers, for instance, or whatnot, we found where some of their loans and their incentives, they were very expensive loans, and there was a lot of additional fees that you might not incur with another lender. So what do you say about that? I mean, I know in some cases, at least I know that's why I like dealing with you so much, Brian, is that if I have a customer that comes with a deal where they have an incentive and you can't compete with them, you're a local bank here. And if you can't compete with them, you say, hey, listen, there's no way I can compete with that. And that's the kind of person you want to deal with. But not everybody's professional like that. First of all, you don't have agents that have a clue about any of this stuff, and they don't care. And then you have lenders or mortgage brokers like yourself that don't really truly understand these programs, don't ask the right questions, and don't care. But have you seen that? I mean, and what should someone do to look out for that?
Yeah, so I guess the big one, and I can't, well, I can't remember the builder offhand, but nor should I probably mention the name, but
Yeah.
but I have seen some of the worksheets where, okay, they're giving this $10,000 incentive, but they're charging like $10,000 in fees just to give it back. So yeah, they're technically giving it to you, but there's these astronomical charges to it. And so somebody had come to me, and I basically was upfront with them and said, look, if this is a really good deal, at least I'll solidify that, yeah, you're getting a good deal. Or if it's something that that I could meet or beat, then give me a chance at it. But that's exactly what they were doing. It was more of a, hey, here's these charges and here's this credit back. And this is how we're coming up with it, which, I
Essentially,
mean,
you're just paying for it. They're
you're
baking it into the fees, and we've come across that a couple of times, and it wasn't until we took a loan estimate worksheet and compared them, two of them from two different organizations. And we were like, some of the line items, I wish I could remember the names they called them, but you would ask the lender or even the sales rep and go, hey, do you know what is this line item? And there would be no honest, like clear explanation for it. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and the crazy part about it is, and especially for people moving out of state, is that some just think that's the way that it is, So now this was non-builder related, not just in general, but I had a customer that was, they said, "Oh my gosh, their rate is so much better than yours. I'm not going with you. I'm going with them." And I'm like, "All right, time out, time out. Just send me what they sent you. Let me see it." And so, and this happened to be Quicken Loans, and these online places are a little scary sometimes, but it was legitimately a $16,000 charge, and yeah, their rate was lower than mine. I mean, and I was like, "Do you realize they're charging you $16,000 for this?" I'm like, "If I charged that, like, my rate would be probably a little better." But it I think for the normal, I don't do this every day for a living kind of a thing, like, you might not notice that that's blatantly wrong,
Yeah.
Um, so it's just stuff like that, and I think it kind of works its way into what Greg's talking about with some of these, incentives maybe aren't always what they appear on the surface, but we can get to the bottom of what it is.
Yeah. So really quick, I mean, do people that are coming from out of state, does it make sense for them to call local lenders or any benefit to that at all? By a local lender where you're purchasing as opposed to using a lender from back home in New York or wherever they're from?
Yeah, no, I think local is key for really anywhere that you go, just because they're not familiar with kind of the nuances of specifically Northeast Florida. Like, you ask somebody in New York or wherever, "Hey, what about the CDD?" They'll say, "CDD what?"
Right.
And it can really lead to some heartache at closing. Not that they're trying to not be forthcoming, but what they don't know, they don't know. And I've had people, show up to a closing before and say, "Oh my gosh, it was 5,000 more than I thought." They didn't know about all these community fees that were there, and so, and that's very invaluable to have somebody that's kind of in tune to the local market, for sure.
Yeah. And then another thing I'm going to ask you really quick, and then I know I'll let you go because I know you have little ones, but what happens if so the right thing for you to do as a buyer is to ask for a loan estimate worksheet, right?
Yep.
Now, if a lender, I mean, have you ever heard, I mean, I don't know why, maybe they're busy or whatnot, but have you ever heard of people getting pushback and the lender, especially those preferred lenders for the builder or in-house builder lenders, where they hold back? Is that something where you're like, that's really weird. Why are they not? Is it a lot of work for them to do that? Is it a pain in the butt? Or is it because they're like, hey, I don't really want to break this down for you because I don't want you don't want you to see all these additional fees that you're basically paying for, even though you think it's an incentive, it's baked in on the loan. Is that? I mean, am I being? I don't know. I like to trust everybody and give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's why I deal with people I know only. I like to deal with certain sales reps. I like to deal with certain lenders. What's your thought on that?
So yeah, I mean, it does take some work to create that. It's just not magically, boof, here it is. So,
Yeah.
and when I make those, and they don't necessarily, in the beginning, it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal, what's called a loan estimate. You can get a fee sheet or a cost sheet. That's something a lot more attainable, because once you get into the loan estimate, you've got, I mean, this is where all the mortgage compliance comes out, where you have the address in there, you're disclosing hundreds of pages. So, I mean, there is quite a bit more to that. And that's typically once you find a specific property. But initially, doing an initial fees worksheet or something along those lines, I mean, I just have a kind of a dummy template set up where I plug in your sale price. I plug in what your down payment is and just kind of verbally what you tell me over the phone, hey, my credit score is this. And then I know the community fees already. So I kind of run everything up. And I mean, it probably only takes 5 minutes to do. I mean, it's nothing crazy. So I think it could be a combination of things, Greg. I mean, it could be laziness, it could be busyness, or I'd like to not think, that they don't want you to see everything, but
Yeah.
I'm sure some of that's out there too. But
Yeah, but I mean, if it's a preferred lender, it shouldn't be a lot of work. And I mean,
no,
if you're seriously contemplating, especially a lender that has incentives, and they say, hey, the only way you can take advantage of these incentives is use our preferred lender. Hopefully, that preferred lender would just like you have the template and realize that these people are serious about buying the home if they're
oh
contacting
yeah.
a preferred
I mean,
lender,
that's
right?
obviously um, a big part of the whole buying process. How much is it? What are these
Yeah,
costs? What does it look like? What, you know,
right. Yeah, but
50,000? Oh,
so many people don't ask,
mhm.
what makes a lender a preferred lender with the builder? Because some of y'all are preferred lenders with some builders, some other lenders are preferred with other lenders. Is that something you can talk about?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly just boils down to relationships in a lot of cases. I've
Yeah,
worked with a few of my builders for, shoot, over one in particular, 12 years, so
yeah,
it just long standing, good working relationships. They know we're going to do a good job and
yeah,
whatnot. Now some of the larger builders, big national ones, like you said, they own their own mortgage company. So that's a little bit different because obviously the builder's making money on both sides then. So,
yeah,
but for some of these smaller, more local builders, or even some of these smaller or larger, like regional ones, I mean, you can get some people in my position in there just because, just relationship building is pretty much the
yeah.
biggest
I mean,
part
the
of it.
builders, if they're going to take a home off the market, they want to make sure the buyer is qualified. And what better way to
Mhm.
see if a buyer is qualified by one of your lenders, preferred lenders that you trust and that you know that they know the market here. Like you're saying, they're not out of
Right,
state. They do understand all the fees involved, and there's going to be no
right.
mistakes. So
And I
I
don't,
guess
and
what?
I don't know this for sure, but I would like to think if I have my pre-approval letter with that buyer and they go ahead and make the contract and start, I have a feeling that they probably would select maybe that buyer, all things being equal, just because they've already been vetted, by someone they know. So,
Yeah, and that's what I always say. I mean, specifically for my buyers, like all the people in Nocatee, they're waiting for this next big phase where there's going to be great opportunities again for bigger lots and whatnot. I'm telling people, be ready. Have a good professional agent that knows what's going on over there. Make sure that they have their lender ready for you, so that when the opportunity comes, you have all your ducks in a row. You know what kind of lot you want. You know what kind of floor plan you want. You've already been pre-qualified by the lender. You go to a sales rep at a builder and say, yeah, they're all squared away. They know what they want. They know what they're buying. And by the way, they're pre-qualified already. All you got to do is send us a contract. Guess who they're going to give that better lot to? It's obvious. They're going to give it to somebody who's prepared because it's less work. They don't have to go through the rigmarole of getting someone prepared that doesn't have an agent that's not telling them what they need to have to be prepared. Yeah, so a lot of the big builders we're talking about that have their own lending departments. I think Mattamy Homes has their own lending department. Toll Brothers definitely has their own lending department. DR Horton has their own lending department. ICI does not have their own lending department. I do not believe. That's another national builder. David Weekley does not have their own lending department. Those are some pretty big builders, actually. ICI and David Weekley not having their own lending department, so they have their preferred lenders. Who am I forgetting? I think Richmond American. They also have their own preferred lender, I believe.
I think
So
so. Yep.
yeah. So and again, just because it's a preferred lender and you have incentives, always good to get a second quote, correct?
Can't hurt. Yep.
Yeah. And then just a quick reminder, I know I ask you this every time, but people still constantly, they're not sure. They're like, is it 14-day, 20-day, 30-day? If you pull your credit, you can do twice or if you pull your credit the first time, how many days do you have till it doesn't affect your credit score again?
So, so I've seen some mixed things, but generally, if you pull it within 2 weeks, you're fine.
Okay.
The 30-day part, it kind of gets into some credits starting to update, and so you could find some variances there, but definitely within 2 weeks, you'd be fine. And
Right.
you know,
Can somebody call first time and say, hey, Brian, I'm considering a particular home like Providence, and you're the preferred lender. Can you kind of give me a worksheet or fee sheet, et cetera, with a soft pull, meaning not pull my credit?
yeah. So I mean, I can just so there's two different things. I mean, we can just say, hey, here's what the numbers would look like for closing costs based on what you're telling me. And then there's getting qualified, where, we can do a soft credit pool where we can kind of see what your debts are, but it won't let me run any formal approval systems. So we'd be able to say, okay, here are your debts, here's your income, does it work? And that would be the non-evasive way. Now, since we're talking about credit, and Greg reminded me to send this to you because this might be a good link for you to post somewhere. But
Yeah.
there is a rampant problem right now in the mortgage world with what's called trigger leads. And this is anytime a lender, so like for example, myself, if we pull your credit report, the actual credit bureaus like Experian or whatnot, they will sell your information to other mortgage companies. And so I've legitimately had a guy get a couple hundred calls in one day, and they know information. Like they're supposed to know, hey, you've pulled the credit for the purpose of a mortgage. And then they fish and try to see, what's it for? Are you refinancing? Are you, because I mean, I'll be honest, it's tougher times right now in the mortgage world. I mean, there's some fairly desperate people, and they're buying those leads, and they'll say whatever they need to say. So what I'm gonna send you once we get off here is there is an opt out button. I don't know how good it works, but I've been sending it to everybody that we pool with, and part of our online application too. There's a button on there that'll take you to the site, and it will opt you out of them selling your information. So, take it
That's
for what you will,
incredible.
but
I mean,
it's
I heard
nuts.
this too. I've had people complaining, going, I don't understand. I just went through the whole loan process, credit pull, and I got bombarded by phone calls. That's insane. I
It's
mean, yeah, we'll
nuts.
put that in, we'll pin it to the
Yeah.
comments below, maybe put it in the description.
And I'm not talking one or two calls. I mean, it's like 100 calls. I mean, it just fills the whole
Yeah.
phone up. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you should also have your number on the registered the do not call list. And I think it is like if somebody calls and you are registered in the do not call list, if you just mentioned, by the way, who are you, whatnot. This is a $10,000 fine for calling me. I think it's something ridiculous like that. They'll get the heck off the phone pretty darn quick. I'm pretty sure on that.
Yeah.
But that is so annoying.
It's really annoying.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I always hear these brokerages and agencies where they're like, get on the phone, start cold calling, and they call
Yeah.
everyone on these lists that they buy. And I'm like,
That's what it
so
is.
great. I'm so grateful that I'm so blessed by all my clients and customers that call me, do this channel and whatnot, that I don't have to do that, because it is so, in this day and age, just to randomly cold call people
Oh,
off a
yeah.
list you purchased somewhere. I thought those days are over, you know what I mean? But they're not,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not.
that was more 2006, 7 before all that kind of
Yeah,
went goodbye. So, yeah. But I'll
yeah,
definitely send you that. It's
cool.
regardless of what you do, it could avoid some aggravation for sure. So,
Yeah, awesome. Well, I don't know if you want to hang on for this. I appreciate you being on here. Nobody has left any questions for Brian. I'm about to send him off, folks. We're on the 9 o'clock hour, and I have no questions for you here. No one likes to talk about loans and financing.
boring.
It's boring. You know what? I mean, I can't stress to people how important it is to talk to somebody when you're looking at purchasing a five, six, seven, $800,000 house. The reality is that, a lot of these incentives are in areas where they have more supply. And so just like Brian said, I say also to my folks, listen, if you're going to move to this area, I would love for you to take advantage of these incentives, but don't call me in 2 years to resell, because we literally looked at houses this week. I think we were looking in Rivertown, and we were looking at resales that were built in 2020 or 2022, which was the peak. And there was brand new construction still being built in the community, same home for the same price, or maybe just a little bit more, but then all these additional incentives. And so, I always say to folks, I'm like, make sure you're going to be around for a little while. If you're going to take advantage of those incentives, there's a reason why those incentives exist, is because it's additional inventory, or it's probably the less, no, I want to say less desirable. It's like you'll see houses that have master bedrooms upstairs, for instance, and they sit on the market a little longer because not everybody wants to be in the room next door to their kids or the guest or whatever. So, but those are the kind of houses that I'm seeing where if you don't mind that, or you want to be near your baby next door or whatnot, you can potentially get a great deal, same with the lot and whatnot. But Brian, I'm going to let you go. I have no more comments here from anybody. So I appreciate you joining me tonight. And for those of you that are still watching, I know, Brian, you're probably not going to want to watch this, but I'm going to start pulling up some of these incentives here from some of the builders.
All right. We'll have fun.
Yeah. Thank you for joining
All
us.
right.
If anybody has a question for Brian, you can also, if you're watching this as a recording, just leave it in the comments. We'll get them answered for you as well. Brian, thank you for joining us, brother.
You got it. See you, buddy.
All right. See you. All right. So I'm back to me again. I'm always fascinated every time I do different deals with the lender on the opportunities and possibilities. And because interest rates are 7% and builders do have inventory here in Northeast Florida and Jacksonville areas, there are some incentives out there. And so, for instance, let us see. I was visiting Madeira Homes, and you'll see a lot of rebates out there, like prices slashed. I think the crazy peak was in 2022, and now we're here in 2024, and I think things are leveling out. And in some cases where there's lots of inventory, people that need to relocate, they're lowering the price of the home. So we're seeing a lot of price reductions on resales. With that being said, you're seeing a lot of price reductions. And then, of course, spec homes that builders have, which are complete done. Those are where the advantages are, the homes that are done and sitting. And another little tip is, if the new construction home is done and sitting and there's incentives in it, if you go in that new construction home and it's got furnishing in it and it is staged, there is your best incentives right there, because now you're seeing builders are paying a staging fee to have that furniture in the home. And those are the deals. Those are the things I look for my customers. I'm like, this one is staged. This is costing money. Same goes for a resale. If it's professionally staged and the folks moved out, that's where your opportunity lies. So again, in Madeira, I saw a quick move in, reduced from $892 to $850. Okay, these are homes that were priced too high 3-6 months ago. They've been sitting on the market for 90, 120 days, and those where the price reductions are coming in. It's a very difficult time now for listing agents to price homes, because people are still wanting pricing from 2 months ago, and the pricing is completely changed. You cannot just look at comps from 2 months ago. You have to look at comps in the last 30 days because it has been very volatile. And I would say, if you're doing a resale, it is imperative that you list the home properly, that it's staged correctly. If you have new construction in your community and you're listing your home, you make sure that you have it professionally listed by a real estate pro that's going to make sure it's staged properly, and more importantly, it's priced properly. So here we go. We have a Madeira home. Not a Madeira home, a Mastercraft home in Madeira. Was $892, now $850,000. Actually, this one won't be completed until May 2024. So we're already seeing them slash prices off, and the CDD bond is paid off. I mentioned that earlier. I'm seeing here quick move-ins with Toll Brothers. We're seeing, I'm I'm seeing $10,000 to $15,000 towards closing costs with Toll Brothers with their preferred lender. Again, be careful. Make sure when you are seeing those rebates using the Toll Brothers lender, which is pretty much their company, make sure that you're not paying part of those fees back in closing costs. Also seeing a little bit of money here off of list price, even on new construction as well. I'm seeing roughly about 10, 15, 20,000. One of the big ones I'm seeing here in Nocatee is a local builder, Providence Homes. They're blowing through a lot of spec homes. They had a lot of extra inventory in spec homes. We're seeing rate buy downs, $40,000, $50,000. I mean, it's incredible because that on new construction, you have higher closing costs. So you're certainly going to have a pretty high, much higher closing costs on new construction than you will on resale. And so having those incentives to gobble up those closing costs is a big help. And then again, like I was talking with Brian on something is 40, 50 grand, you can actually buy down your rate 30 years. So I'm seeing that with Providence Homes. Let me see what else I have here. I'm going to pull up my builder email list here. Let's see. Yeah, so David Weekly Homes, 6% flex cash towards closing costs, or rates as low as 5.49 fixed. That's a pretty good one. Another David Weekly, $35,000 flex dollars can be used off price, or if you use a preferred lender toward the rate buy down closing cost. In addition, 1% towards closing costs with the use of a preferred lender. That's Seven Pines, David Weekly. What else am I seeing here? Let's go ahead and look at. Got this one today. Richmond American. We have low rate specials for quick move-in homes. Silverleaf, Elm Creek, Richmond American. Again, we're seeing on certain homes with them, you'll see fixed rates as well. What else have I seen with them? Current incentives, 4.75, 5.48 APR financing through Richmond. So yeah, a lot of different incentives out there. Again, if you have a real estate professional that really understands what you're looking for, then, you know, we can have those conversations and try to figure out what you're looking for, what builder has what you're looking for, if it's going to fit you, and then also if it's a good purchase and how you can utilize those incentives as well. One quick comment. We're getting all the comments right now. Hello, are you also seeing Nocatee rental listings sitting on the market longer? You know, we don't have a ton of rentals in Nocatee. I just think that, again, as some of the listings that you see sitting for over 30 to 45 days, or 60 days more like it, because now we're seeing average days on market go up to 30 to 45 days. I think we are seeing rental pricing a little higher than they should be. And so folks are going, hey, I don't want to pay $4,000 a month. It doesn't make sense. So I think it's just because the pricing is so high. I mean, you used to be able to rent a house in Nocatee as low as $2,400. I think in the 3,000 mid-range, but people that are going at 3,800, 4,600, you know, I think that's the only reason they're sitting longer, because believe it or not, I have customers that have purchased transitional homes that they're going to sell once their main home that they're building is ready, because they don't want to waste $4,000 a month in rent on an older home or a home that won't work for them. So yeah, if you have a rental and it's sitting in the market long, think about things like, are you priced correctly first and foremost? Second thing is, do you have a fence? People like to have yards fenced in. People, if they're going to be charged a lot, you got to show them a few, like, you know, why it's valued that high. You know, a fenced in yard, for instance, is a plus. A water softener, or just overall maintained. So Yeah, I still think we have a need for rentals, but if the price too high, folks are saying, hey, you know what? I'll go rent a townhome because we have a ton of townhomes people bought. They shouldn't have bought as investors that are renting them out, or they're going to one of the new apartment complexes here. You have the Reserve and Nocatee, Cadence, and the Duval section. So you have a lot of other options, and I think there's going to be a correction with the rental market as well. Let's see what we have here. One more last question because I am taking off. I went over the hour. What do you think about those interest rates only loans where you pay the interest only for the first couple of years? Yeah, Jackie, I would have asked Brian that question. Maybe put it in the comments and I'll have him answer that. I don't really want to comment on that because I think that it really depends on you as a person and your situation. Everybody's situation is different depending on what your strategy is, how long you're going to be in the home, and what your financing are, what's your strategy. And that's really something that needs to be discussed with a lender. And make sure you're talking to an honest lender that has your best interest, right? Because there's some lenders out there, just like realtors, they don't care. They just want to sell you, and they're not keeping your best interests in play. I personally have not seen any of my clients do an interest-only loan, but if it works for you, go for it. I would have a second opinion from an actual lender, and I don't know. It depends on your situation and what your strategy is. So I wish I could have answered that better for you. What do we have here? One last one. Do you see the resale Nocatee pricing continuing trending downward in the next quarter? No, I don't. I mean, honestly, I don't see it trending downward. It really depends on what community you're talking about. Some of these builders are raising their prices next week. We're selling a lot of homes right now. I don't think it's trending downward. I think it's just a pricing correction. We plateaued. And so, again, when you're listing a home, you should be really looking at what's the inventory available out there. What are you competing against as far as new construction? And then, really figure that out. Nocatee's towards the end here. We have one last big project going on. They're launching Crosswinds and they're opening up the models this weekend, finally. That's the community near Pine Island Academy. There's a lot of villas, but we have shortages of larger lot homes. And some people are the pricing is astronomical. So the pricing is the same as if you were building a brand new home in Coral Ridge. Now we're seeing that the builders are running out of larger home lots inventory. And so now we're seeing people go, hey, you know what? I can actually buy a resale that's already done for less. Again, based on what your needs are, it's all supply and demand. There's not an overall trend of decline in pricing. We're seeing some of these houses in Coral Ridge. I mean, we're seeing upper close to $2 million, if not higher. There's an ICI home listed at 2.6 million, and I know they've had offers upwards of that, and they've turned it down. So it's supply and demand. We're at the end of the project. We have in our next community. I can't talk too much about it, but because I don't want to upset the developer, but we know we're going to have 40, 50, and 60-foot lots. Again, I'm really excited about the 60-foot lots that are coming. It's going to be a beautiful project. The builders, I'm really excited about. They're going to be involved in that. So when that comes out, you're going to have more inventory. It's going to be really, really interesting how they price that out. That's what I'm really interested in, because I've been selling so much in Seabrook Village. I've sold so much in Palm Crest. I've sold so much in Coral Ridge. I'm dying to see how they price out this next lot in the next phase, and really curious to see how that goes. If interest rates go down, like they say during the election year, that is not going to help the cost of home. So pricing, if the interest rates go down, like they say they are, I think pricing is going to be really strong here. And again, we don't have a ton of inventory. This real estate in Nocatee is gold. It's absolute gold. It's still close to the beach. The community, I did a video today. It's coming out next Tuesday on our commercial center. I mean, you know, Nocatee's not even a city, and we have all this stuff going on here in our town center that's accessible to us. We call it the bubble. And we're close to the beach, and you can get to everything on a golf cart. It is just a truly remarkable place. And you know, we're at 11,000 homes or just under that, and they're only going over 11,000. We're at the end here. So again, it's going to be supply and demand. Look at Ponte Vedra Beach. It's blown up. We did a video on luxury properties there. Never dreamt you'd see homes selling at $10, $20 million. And I think here in Nocatee, we're just seeing the beginning of homes now in the 2 million range. So yeah, I think depending on larger home lots and whatnot, we have a ton of villas in the pipeline. We have a ton of villas available. But larger lots, I just think the pricing is going to normalize a little bit, or if you call it normal, if you've lived here as long as I do, I can barely call it normal. It's still really high, but it's plateaued. But depending on those certain prize lots and whatnot, they're still going to keep going higher and higher as long as people keep moving here. So anyway, I went 10 minutes over. I appreciate everybody's comments tonight, watching. I appreciate Brian, our preferred lender, coming on and explaining anything. If you're watching this on replay, go ahead and put in the comments any questions. I try to answer all the comments myself. And of course, my name is Greg DiTullio. I live here in Nocatee. It's one of my specialties here in St. Johns County. I'm a little biased, but have a lot of builds going on here, a lot of great relationships with the builders. And so it doesn't cost you anything to have an advocate on your behalf, especially if you're from out of town, having somebody check in on things. So it's to your benefit to, you know, have somebody go. I'm seeing if there's another comment here. We do have another comment, but I'm going to have to cut it off. Yeah, it does you no good not to have a real estate professional to prepare you for the whole process of building, if you are going to go through that, or even finding a good deal on a resale and being prepared. So my information will be in the comments below, pinned as well. You can text me, call me, email me, and I'd love to go ahead and how I can find out how I can help you and ask all those right questions and see if I can help you. So next Tuesday, we have a video coming out, and it's going to be about the town center region and why we're known as a bubble and why people never leave. So I will see you next week. Have a great night. Thank you for joining us. Until next week, have a great one.